So let's talk about the tough love approach. I think it was going to be heard yesterday evening. We gave our listeners a good overview of it. How was it received at City Council yesterday evening?
Well, actually, it'd be 2 weeks from now to come up. So it
Oh,
was
2 weeks. Okay.
uh, it was heard in what was called a public safety committee. So normally, if it would have been in study session, then it would have been advanced to the floor. So it'd be a little bit of time, but it did pass unanimously out of the public policy committee with council members Jurinsky, Sundberg, and Hancock, and so I was very appreciative for that. And so there's two parts to it. I think the first part is we do have a camping ban right now, but it's weak. And so it just says that if you are now on private property, that's up to the private property owner to file trespass. So they can do that without notice. The and then parks, it's without notice. But if you're in outside of that, like the I-225 corridor, it's a 72-hour notice. It is all you have to do is move. Well, you can move down the street, move back. And I think this unsheltered homelessness is not born of economic, consequences. It's really a crisis of drug addiction and mental illness. And it's hard to understand where one starts and one stops. But anyway, so as long as they have a choice, they'll stay on the street. They will stay on the street. We make contact to them every week with outreach teams and offer them services, a place to stay and everything. And very rarely do we get anybody to take us up on it. It can't be a choice. It cannot be a choice. They're a threat to public health and public safety. And so we're going to start with the I-225 corridor and make it a trespass, no notice. You get a ticket with a court date. You don't show up for your court date, it's failure to appear, and you can be arrested.
Talking with Mayor Mike Coffman. Mayor, we got a number of texts and calls about this, about the time you went and actually lived as a homeless person for a few weeks. This was during the pandemic in 2020, but you learned a lot, and people seem to be very impressed by your initiative. Tell folks what you did and what you learned out there.
Well, it was during the height of that pandemic, and that's the only way I got away with it, because if you went into a shelter, you had to wear a mask. I wore, a wool cap, a hat or whatever. And so it was a great disguise for the time. And so I divided the time between the shelters and between the street. And so what the Homeless for the Advocates were saying, they were presenting a very false narrative. They were saying people are on the street, not in shelters, because, they fear for their safety. They fear that they're going to have their few possessions stolen, and during a public health pandemic, they worry about being in a congregate environment. None of which is true. What I found out is that they don't want to go to shelters because shelters have rules, and one of the rules is you can't use drugs in the shelter, and so that's a non-starter for them. I never got anything stolen in the shelter. I almost got everything stolen on the street. I never felt threatened in the shelter. I always had felt threatened on the street. They had rules in the shelters about, public health, about social distancing and everything, and they were strict about those requirements. People were shooting up on the street. Who cared about public health?
Talking with Mayor Mike Coffman about his tough love approach to dealing with the homeless in Aurora. Mayor, how is your approach different than Mayor Mike Johnston's approach in Denver?
Well, let me just say, before I get to that, there's a second part to what we're doing. We're putting forward a brand new court along with this new trespass ordinance, and the brand new court will say, our goal is not to punish you. Our goal is to keep you off the street and get you into services, get you away from drugs. If you got mental health concerns, we want to treat that. And so it puts them on probation, gives them a place to stay, puts them on probation, and essentially says as long as you follow these court-ordered requirements, we will drop the charges at the end of your probation. Denver and Aurora are going in opposite directions. And the direction and I think it's going to be a great test for the country. So for Denver, it's called Housing First. And Housing First essentially says that housing is so basic to the human condition that if you solve for housing, you solve for everything else. And so that offer them services, like mental health, like addiction recovery, like job training, but don't require anything of them. I just think that's foolish. We have a housing first strategy, whereby in exchange for taxpayer support, you're going to be required to do things. You're going to be required to. I mean, if you want to stay in a congregate shelter, that's fine. Denver will give you a hotel room, if you want to move up to better circumstances, you have to participate in job training. You have to participate in mental health. You have to participate in addiction recovery if those are your issues, but definitely job training. And then you're not going to get your own room unless you're working full time and still in need of some services. But you got to be working, and that's our goal: is to get people to work and not have them be permanent wards of the state on welfare.
Oh, see, Mike Coffman, mayor of Aurora, with Jeff and Bill talking about the new plan to get the homeless off the street, targeting the I-25 corridor. Going to come up here in a couple of weeks at the next city council meeting. I like the fact that you're reflecting some of the things we talked about with Step Denver earlier about addiction and then getting them to work, getting them to have some skin in the game. What I really want to focus on with this question is that heart court. I feel that is a very important plank in the process. And can you talk to us about how it came about and why it is so important? Because it is a special track for these offenders to get them through the system as quickly as possible. That's a positive that I see. But talk to us about why this court, the heart court, is necessarily an important component for this program.
Sure, that's what so we've got two things moving simultaneously. One is the tougher policy on trespassing. Then the other one is this specialized court that will handle low offenses by homeless individuals to really try to focus on them taking care of their challenges, addressing their challenges, so that they can have what I would call, I guess, sustainable, stable housing that they pay for, where they can be employed, where they can have freedom from being addicted to drugs or alcohol. And Step Denver is an incredible program. We are challenged as a government entity to the extent that they are not, that we have to deal with everybody. And so we will have a congregate shelter with minimal services for people that aren't participating in case management, aren't participating in program. Our goal is to get them in that. Council Member Steve Sundberg is moving forward with the trespass ordinance. Councilmember Curtis Gardner is moving forward with his new court that you just mentioned, the Heart Court. And then Councilmember or Mayor Pro Tem Dustin Savanik is moving forward with what we call an Aurora Navigation Resource Center that will have this 3 tiers that will, congregate shelter, then get people involved where they can have semi-private accommodations, like in Step Denver program, where they're in job training and other services. And then when the people are working, then they've earned the privacy of having a hotel room until we can get them moved out. But when Denver is opposite, what Denver does is said, just come off the street and we'll give you that hotel room and we'll feed you and we'll take care of you. And hopefully you're going to participate, that your life's going to be stable and you're going to participate in these things like, addiction recovery, job training, mental health to get you on your feet. I think that's a fantasy, and it's a very expensive fantasy.
That's exactly right. Mayor Mike Coffman, a few quick text message questions here. How's your approach going to impact Aurora's budget?
Well, the good part about it is it will not impact the budget any more than it does today. I think I was not for the legalization of marijuana, but we have it in this state, so we do take some of those revenues and apply them towards this particular program. But we believe, as the nonprofit that will be running this, believes that for the second and third tier that I mentioned, that they in fact will be they will be able to raise money for that. Obviously, people aren't going to, they're not going to be able to raise money for the people that aren't yet engaged in work or work training. But it's a more conservative approach. And so we believe that there will be philanthropy dollars out there. Let me tell you, there's a tremendous cost to people that are what I call unsheltered homelessness. I believe that anybody that's trying to get back on their feet is going to be in a sheltered situation. It's the unsheltered that I'm concerned about, and the amount of shoplifting that they do, the amount of what they can't panhandle, they steal. They when it's cold, they break into buildings. They'll go into bathrooms and office buildings and grocery stores and either shoot up or smoke meth or fentanyl. They will start fires that sometimes get out of control. So let me tell you, there is a cost to unsheltered homelessness, and I think by addressing it in a more aggressive way, we're going to reduce that cost.
Now, this is going to dovetail pretty nicely on the statement right there, Mayor Coffman. There is a significant portion of the unsheltered homeless that are there because they want to. They want the lifestyle. They want the drugs. They want the people to show up with the food. How effective is this program going to be in getting them help if they don't want it?
Very effective, I think, simply because so right now, and I wrote the initial camping ban, and people thought it was so draconian at the time, the 72 hours notice and no penalty as long as you move. It gives it's a hassle for them, but it gave them a choice that I'm just going to move and stay on the street. We're not this new policy and the way it's written, it can expand at will beyond the 225 corridor. Obviously we're still building our police force up and making sure that we have the necessary resources in place. That's why I'm just starting with the I-225 corridor, but it seems to be the center of gravity for those experiencing unsheltered homelessness. But it's you can't be a choice, and oftentimes they'll have other outstanding warrants out there, and so when we go and that it's a zero notice. Your traffic ticket, the equivalent of a ticket. But if you've already missed a court date, if you've got outstanding warrants on other things, you're going to be arrested right then and there and taken into detention. And then we will, and then obviously we're going to try and get you into the court that I mentioned, the new court that we're going to set up. But it can't be at the end of the day. If you can offer them all the services in the world. And they'll stay on the street. And there's just a culture about that. It serves their addiction. So there's some mental illness in there, but again, it's hard to say, what it's a chicken and the egg thing between mental health and addiction. But it can't be a choice. I've got to get them off the street. I believe this proposal will do it.
Mayor Mike Coffman on his tough love approach to homelessness in the city of Aurora. Mayor, I've known a lot of political leaders. When I think of the political leaders that put their constituents first and are motivated by serving the people they represent, you're at the top of the list. Mayor Mike Coffman, appreciate all the work you do for the people of Aurora. Thank you for making this a great city.
Thank you.
Hey, thank you. Very kind. Thanks.
Jeff and Bill, weekday mornings from 6 to 10 on News Talk 710 KNUS.